Cornell Philip, welcome to ANTILLIAANSE FEESTEN.
Thank you.
You
It's a
have
pleasure
helped
being
shape the music of Dominica. You are a perfect guest for the festival. Dominica is an island located between Guadeloupe and Martinique with around 73,000 inhabitants. And Dominica offers a wide range of music. Were there times when you thought that the external influence was so strong that your own cultural identity had a hard time?
I mean, I grew up in the 80s. I really started to get into my, being who I am today in the late 70s, early 80s. I would say there was a void in the culture, in our cultural heritage back in Dominica at the time. Things were dominated by the hi-fi, the hi-fi at the time. So when I was growing up, music and our heritage was at an all-time low. Because we had all these influences from all over the Caribbean that came in through the hi-fi. There were hardly any live bands playing at the time. So everything was imported. All our music, most of our music was imported at the time.
Did the independence from UK in 1978 have an impact on the evolution of music?
I guess when we became independent, I guess we became more of a proud people. I would imagine because my brother was a cultural officer, my older brother was a cultural officer, and I can remember there was a deep wanting to archive the cultural rhythms of the island, to preserve that heritage, that dying heritage at the time.
In the mid-70s, Calypso suddenly appeared. It was very successful, but after less than 10 years it had lost its popularity again. How do you explain this interesting phenomenon, and where did it suddenly came from, and why did it quickly lose its significance?
I wouldn't say it lost its significance or it became unpopular. If not all, most of our Cadas legends, our Cadas superstars, they made it out of Dominica, in Guadeloupe, in France, in Europe. There are even bands that during that Cadas era, there were Cadas bands that actually did not play in Dominica ever. Cadas is Dominican, but I think Cadas gained its fame outside of Dominica. In the inventing of Cadas, the initial stages of Cadas started in France, with Exile 1. So, it's just how it happened. It was Dominican, but it was out of Dominica. So I don't think Cadas became unpopular. It was popular in Dominica because it was Dominican, but then seeing that all these artists were all over the place and hardly be in Dominica working, we kind of lost the popularity in Dominica, but it was always there.
Was the international success the driving force behind Calypso?
I believe so. A lot of people don't know, but when you look at the Exile 1 repertoire, you find that there are folk songs in Portugal that originated from Exile 1. Jamais Versa, for instance, is a big folk song in Portugal. And it's not even being played as a Cadas song, but they put it in their own style. But the original melody and lyrics is Dominican. So I think the great success of Cadas was the fact that it was out there.
Gordon Henderson writes that Calypso was displaced by Zouk. How strong was the influence of the Zouk success on the music in Dominica?
Very much, very much. At the time I was growing up in the 80s, Zouk was a major part of the Dominican industry. I mean, you had Kassav, you had bands like Experience Set, Gasoline. And these bands, they created great music and they had a great influence on Dominica. On the Dominican scene, they had a very great influence on Dominica.
You founded the band Windwatch Caribbean Culture in 1988. You were lead singer and keyboardist. Did WCK always have a drum set, or did you experiment with just digital percussion?
The drum set actually came in much later, and something I would correct, the original meaning of WCK was Walkers, Cornell, and Keith. Actually, the three original members of the band. To make ourselves more marketable, we decided to put a meaning to the name, so that's when Windward Caribbean Culture spelled it for K, came into play. But to be honest, that didn't really last. People always gravitated to Walkers, Cornell, and Keith. So in Dominica, people know WCK as Walkers, Cornell, and Keith. Well, I guess I should tell you the story of how Bouyon music came in. I was in Form 3, where I met my best friend at the time, Keith Goddard. And the both of us came from very musical families. We were the last or the youngest of two very musical families, the Philip family and the Joseph family. And we lived in close proximity. We went to the same school. So what would happen is that after school, we would come together at my house. Sometimes I'd go to his family house. We would play music together on this little keyboard, you know, and at the same time, my older brother, Ashton Philip, he had a song system. Because as I told you earlier, song systems were blowing up during the time. And he happened to have one, and we had access to the speakers and the little mixer and stuff like that. So we started to play around. Now, my other brother, Daryl Philip, who was the cultural officer, he had the task at his workplace where he had to archive the traditional rhythms of Dominica. So what he would do, he'd go to the countryside, he would get these bands and he'd bring them down to the family house and he would record them. What happened, boys being troublesome, he would want us to stop playing so he could do his recordings to make these archives. But we ended up playing together with them. So at that time, it had a lot of jimping bands. A jimping band is made up of the accordion, which is the melody, the siak, which is a percussion, hi-hat kind of instrument, the tambal, which is the drum, and then the boom, 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 which is a pipe, a long pipe that would give you a bass sound. And we started to play with these guys. And being on the keyboard, we had these little gadgets, it had this little drum machine, so we'd play around with them to get something close to what the percussion instrument was doing. Then we would go and we would get a pipe organ, or if the keyboard had an accordion which sounded like the real thing, we would play it, you know, and the boom boom, we would do it on the bass end of the keyboard. Eventually, we started to develop something, you know, and my brother would play at tea parties and, you know, like community events. He would have the song system and he started to go to these school events with him and he started to play. People started to take notice of that. Two things were in our favor. The fact that there were no live bands playing at the time, and two, what we were doing was so unique, it was so different from what they were accustomed of hearing. The word started to go around and stuff, and then my brother, along with some of his friends, decided, hey, they had a band before which died, and they decided, let's come. My brother said, well, another brother that is, let's come together and let's see what we can do, what we can come up with. It originally, the plan was that the old members of the old band would come and join us, you know, or we would join them, however it was. But there was no instruments at the time. My brother bought me a keyboard. My other brother bought Keith a bass guitar. Walkers had his own guitar. That is where Walkers, who is the guitarist, Cornell, myself, Keith, the bass player. That is how we came up with the name WCK. So some people say that Bouyon music came from soca, but not this in soca music, because there's no debate. There was no soca influence on Bouyon music. It came directly from our traditional rhythms. No matter how you look at it, it came from the traditional rhythms of Dominica into electronic music. When people ask me what Bouyon music is, I tell them that Bouyon music is the modernization of the traditional rhythms of Dominica.
Another characteristic was the intensive use of keyboards. In addition to the technology renewal, has WCK changed the type of musica in Dominica?
Yes, it definitely has. I mean, growing up, it was Kada Slipso. We had this sense of pride for Kada Slipso, you know, but seeing that these musicians and these bands were always out on the road touring, you know, we kind of lost that. I believe it was very refreshing that we had this new sound that we could relate to as Dominicans. WCK always saw we always looked at ourselves as the band that would bring back the culture, a sense of purpose, a sense of pride to the music industry in Dominica. So it really took off, and it was really accepted by the locals as to what we were doing.
The term Bouyon is often used.
Right.
Is Bouyon a rhythm or a style?
Bouyon can be so many things. The original meaning of Bouyon is like a mix, a mixture of foods, different foods put together in one pot. Derek Rapeters, who was the lead singer of WCK, a couple years later he joined us as lead singer. He is also a very culturally minded person. It wasn't a genre at the time, but seeing that this style was getting so popular and it was so unique, historians and well-wishers and friends were telling us that we need to identify what this is, because it was definitely not soca, it was not zouk, it was not compa, it wasn't anything that they have ever heard. They told us that we should identify it, we should brand it as something of our own, something Dominican. And he was the one who came up with the name Bouyon. You know, so we had discussions about it and we were trying to figure out what we can call it. And he's the one that came up with the name Bouyon, and he explained what Bouyon was, you know, and he said that, you know, it's a mixture, and it really is a mixture. It's not only the jimping band, but you have the bele, you have the quadrille, you have the lapo cabuet, which is very strong in the culture of Dominica. And this is things that we always played around with, rhythms that we always played around with. We only saw it was fitting to call it Bouyon, you know, and it took off.
Most of the lyrics today are in English, some are in Creole.
Right.
What is the basis for the lyrics decision?
I don't think it was something that was discussed. It's something that just happened. WCK, growing up in the early years of Bouyon music and WCK, it was always about social commentary and storytelling. You know, it wasn't about the jump and wave like what soca was at the time, you know. It was jump and wave and misbehave and wind down. It was always, Bouyon music always told a story. I think that is what kept it afloat, you know, because people could relate to the lyrical content. Most of it was in English, some of it was in Creole. I don't think that was a definite decision, it just happened that way. It just happened that way.
How widespread is Creole in Dominica today, and does everyone understand it?
Not everyone understands it, but it is very much spoken in Dominica. Very, very much spoken in Dominica. It's like our second language.
Are there differences in language usage on the island?
Yeah, well, there's Creole. We speak Creole, we speak English. And there's also a broken English. You know, like Creole is broken French. And there's a broken English that we call Kokoi, which you'll find in places like Marigot and Wesley, which is in the northwest of Dominica. And it's very unique. It's very unique to Dominica.
If you are not familiar with the type of music, you always compare it with what you know so far. Can you briefly describe how to distinguish a soca tune from a Bouyon track?
Soca, Bouyon, zouk, kadas all came from the same ancestry. We share the same DNA. But when we came down from Africa, we're all small islands separated by water. In Dominica, our focus became on a particular set of instruments. So with Bouyon started with the instrumentation of the jimping band, which was the accordion, the tambal, the siak, and the bombo. Right? That is the base of Dominican music that was put into Bouyon music. If I'm listening to a song, I listen for these elements in the song. Soca is a different thing. Soca can say, but I can listen to a soca song and I know what it does not have. You understand? And it does not have these elements, you know, the original organic elements that Bouyon would have. So that is the distinction that I use. Also, the rhythms are basically the same. It's just where the accents are on the instrumentation being played. Take for instance, you know, Denry segment. Denry segment has, I know Denry segment song from the fact that they would have the loud side stick. Tak, 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 tak. So from the time I hear that, I know that's from St. Lucia. But now, with Bouyon music, I can say, okay, we still have that kind of rhythm, but it's on the higher instead of the tak, 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 tak. And also, right now, Bouyon music has a pattern that I've never heard anywhere in the world. There's this Bouyon pattern that has been developed over the years, and it is so unique. I mean, the soca bands, they play it. It's like Dominica trying to play a reggae music. It sounds similar, but you definitely know it's not Jamaicans playing it. It's the same thing with Bouyon music. The pattern, the drum pattern, the percussion pattern in Bouyon music is something that is very, very much unique and different from any other Caribbean island that I know of.
Are there still jimping bands?
They are still jumping bands. Because of WCK, I believe that the traditional culture of Dominica lifted. Even young children, I mean, young teenagers growing up, they were interested to know where, okay, that is Bouyon music, but what is the roots of Bouyon music? Where did it come from? And because of that, you had a resurgence of the traditional style and the traditional drum and the traditional talent. It started to come up again, and a lot of young people started to play the belly drums, they started to play the accordion, the siyak, the boom boom, the lapo cabret. Our culture was kind of going down, and then when Bouyon music came back, it really went up. Yeah.
You have been active in the music business in various ways for a long time. Have you ever thought about how Bouyon might develop in the future?
I've never wondered about it because things evolve. It doesn't make sense to say that you want it to stay as it is, you want to stay to its original form, because you're going to have generations of generations of generations that are going to see it in their own way and their own light. What I ask of the Dominican artists, the Bouyon artists, and artists around the world is that music is the universal love language. Always speak positivity. The strongest element that you can have in any music is what comes out from the mouth. What I say is that when a song starts, the intro, it intrigues you to listen on. What that keeps you listening is the lyrical content. And I think every musician, every Bouyon musician has a responsibility to really push positivity, push love, push everything positive, good, great in the world. That is my only concern. That, I mean, we've seen what's happening in the world today. You know, so that's my only concern, that we kind of lose that. When it comes to the development of the music, everybody is entitled to their craft. Everybody is entitled to do it. I did it, and I created a new genre. Well, I was one of those who created a new genre. You know, so I cannot say that I don't want the others to experiment and really develop it. Who knows? Something else might come out of it. And look at what's happening today. I mean, the Bouyon music of today is definitely different from the Bouyon music of the 80s and 90s. And because of that, we see great success. So keep on. You understand?
Is there a musical project that you would like to realize?
There's so many things, man. I like collaborations. And when the Creole Music Festival, the World Creole Music Festival started in the mid-90s, we were doing a project where we had different singers come together, and we called it the World Creole Music Anu. And it was adopted by the World Creole Music Festival as the commemorative CD for the World Creole Music Festival. Volume 1, 2, 3 was in 95, 96, 97, somewhere around there. 2018 or something like that, around there, we did a volume 4. And we haven't done one yet since. I wouldn't mind doing another volume of the Music Anu project with new blood, new artists, new voices, new arrangements. To be honest, I'm very proud of what I've done. What I have done, I didn't do it on my own. I did it with a group of people around me who I respect very much. And I always believe in collaborations, be it local or be it regional, be it international. I always believe in collaborations. I would like to see us come together and put another Dominican music project together and bring it out to the world again.